Right now, somewhere in the world, a bodyguard is standing beside a powerful person. A president, a billionaire, a king. The entire purpose of that bodyguard is simple: protection. If danger appears, that person is supposed to step forward and take the risk. That is what bodyguards are for. But imagine something strange. Imagine that the people assigned to protect you were also the people most likely to kill you. That sounds absurd. Yet for many Roman emperors, it was reality. The most powerful men on earth slept only a few meters away from the very soldiers they feared most. These soldiers guarded the palace gates, controlled access to the emperor, watched him eat, watched him travel, and watched him sleep. And over time, they discovered something dangerous. The man they protected needed them far more than they needed him. So why were Roman emperors terrified of their own bodyguards? The answer reveals one of the strangest power struggles in history, a story involving murder, betrayal, political manipulation, and a simple truth about human nature that still exists today. To understand what happened, you first need to understand who these men were. They were called the Praetorian Guard. Originally, they were nothing special. Roman generals often kept elite soldiers close to them during military campaigns to form a personal protective force. These troops were better equipped, better trained, and more trusted than ordinary soldiers. When Augustus became Rome's first emperor, he transformed this idea into a permanent institution, and the Praetorian Guard became the emperor's personal bodyguard. At first, this seemed like a brilliant idea. Who wouldn't want thousands of elite soldiers dedicated to protecting them? But there was a problem. The Praetorian Guard was stationed close to Rome itself. Most Roman legions were scattered across distant frontiers. Some guarded Britain, others watched the Rhine River or protected territories in the Middle East. The Praetorians were different. They lived near the center of power, and power changes people. The historian Tacitus repeatedly described how proximity to power could be more dangerous than power itself. The Praetorians weren't just protecting the emperor, they were watching how government actually worked, every day and every hour. They saw political deals happen behind closed doors. They saw senators flatter rulers, and they saw ambitious men compete for influence. Eventually, they realized something important. Emperors were not gods, they were just men, and men could be replaced. One of the earliest examples involved Emperor Caligula. Today, Caligula is remembered for bizarre stories, extreme cruelty, and unpredictable behavior. Some stories about him were probably exaggerated, while others may have been true. Either way, many powerful Romans hated him, including members of his own guard. In 41 AD, a group of Praetorian officers decided they had enough. One of them was a tribune named Cassius Carrera. During a public event, Carrera and several conspirators attacked the emperor. Within moments, the most powerful man in the Roman world was dead, not killed by foreign enemies or invading armies, but by members of the force assigned to protect him. Think about that. Imagine hiring security guards and discovering that they are the greatest threat to your life. And this was only the beginning. The Praetorian Guard quickly learned an extraordinary lesson. If they could remove an emperor, they could help choose the next one. That realization changed Roman history. Soon, emperors began worrying less about foreign wars and more about keeping the Praetorians happy. Money became extremely important. Every new emperor was expected to reward the guard with gifts called donatives. These payments could be enormous, sometimes worth years of ordinary wages. Why? Because loyalty had become something that could be purchased. The Roman historian Suetonius describes repeated moments when emperors distributed massive financial rewards immediately after taking power. These weren't acts of generosity, they were survival strategies. The message was simple: support me and you get rich. Support someone else and everything changes. Over time, this system became increasingly dangerous. The Praetorian Guard started behaving less like bodyguards and more like political kingmakers. They could elevate rulers, they could remove rulers, and everyone knew it. One of the most shocking examples occurred in the year 193 AD. An emperor named Pertinax had recently taken power and tried to restore discipline and reduce corruption. The Praetorians hated it. Only 86 days after becoming emperor, Pertinax was murdered by members of the Guard. But what happened next was even stranger. According to the historian Cassius Dio, the Praetorian Guard essentially auctioned off the Roman Empire, literally. After killing Pertinax, they offered support to whichever candidate promised the largest payment. Imagine that, the greatest empire on earth being sold like a piece of property. The winning bidder was a wealthy senator named Didius Julianus who promised more money than anyone else, so the Praetorians declared him emperor. For a brief moment, the fate of millions of people was decided by a financial bidding war conducted by bodyguards. It sounds unbelievable, yet it really happened. Modern historian Adrian Goldsworthy has described this period as one of the clearest examples of military influence overwhelming political legitimacy. The emperor ruled Rome, but the Praetorians controlled access to the throne, and those are not the same thing. This created a psychological nightmare for every emperor who followed. Who could you trust? Your enemies were obvious, but your bodyguards were not. An assassin approaching from outside the palace was dangerous, but an assassin standing beside your bed was far worse. Many emperors became deeply suspicious. Some constantly replaced officers, others rotated assignments, some relied on spies, and others isolated themselves. The Roman court slowly became a world filled with paranoia, and paranoia can become self-fulfilling. The more an emperor distrusted the Praetorians, the more the Praetorians distrusted the emperor. The cycle fed itself. One famous example involved Emperor Commodus. Commodus inherited enormous power and became increasingly detached from reality. Ancient sources describe extravagant behavior and dangerous decisions. Eventually, powerful figures around him feared what might happen next, and the conspiracy that ended his reign involved individuals from within his own circle. Again, proximity became vulnerability. The people closest to power often possess the greatest ability to destroy it. This pattern appears throughout human history. Psychologists studying organizations have found that internal threats frequently cause more damage than external ones. Researchers such as Robert Cialdini have explored how trust, influence, and access create opportunities for manipulation. The closer someone is to a system, the greater their potential impact on that system. Ancient Rome demonstrated this principle on an enormous scale. The Praetorians had access. Access created influence, influence created power, and power created temptation. Yet something even stranger happened over time. The Praetorian Guard started becoming victims of their own success. Every emperor feared them, but every emperor also understood the danger they represented. Eventually, a ruler appeared who decided enough was enough. His name was Constantine. By the early 4th century, the Roman Empire had changed dramatically. Civil wars, political crises, and military conflicts had transformed the imperial system. Constantine recognized that the Praetorian Guard represented a permanent threat, not because they were weak, but because they were strong. After defeating a rival emperor in 312 AD, Constantine took a radical step. He dissolved the Praetorian Guard entirely. Just like that, an institution that had influenced Roman politics for centuries disappeared. Their barracks were destroyed, their power vanished, and their long experiment in controlling emperors finally ended. But the story doesn't end there, because the real lesson isn't about Rome, it's about people. Most viewers imagine power as something simple. One person gives orders, everyone else follows. History rarely works that way. Power often belongs to whoever controls access, whoever controls information, and whoever stands closest to the decision maker. The Roman emperors appeared all-powerful. Their statues filled cities, their faces appeared on coins, and their armies conquered continents, yet many of them spent their lives fearing the men standing directly beside them, the men carrying shields, the men guarding doors, the men sworn to protect them. Why? Because power is never as secure as it looks from the outside. The Praetorian Guard understood something that many people never notice. A throne is only a chair. Its strength comes entirely from the people willing to support it. Once enough supporters change their minds, even the most powerful ruler becomes vulnerable. That was true in ancient Rome, and in many ways it is still true today. Every organization depends on trust, every leader depends on cooperation, and every system depends on people choosing to support it. When that trust disappears, everything changes. The Roman emperors learned this lesson in the most terrifying way possible, not from enemies across distant borders, not from invading armies, and not from barbarians at the gates, but from the footsteps they heard outside their own bedroom doors each night. The footsteps of the men who were supposed to keep them safe, and perhaps that is the strangest part of all. The Roman emperors controlled vast territories, commanded enormous armies, and ruled millions of people. Yet some of their greatest fears came from the very people standing closest to them. Right now, somewhere in the world, a bodyguard is standing beside a powerful person. For most leaders, that presence represents safety. For many Roman emperors, it represented something very different, a reminder that the greatest threat is not always the enemy outside the gates. Sometimes it is the person holding the keys.